Bola, if we look at the perspective of the business, pre-election, like you have in your intro, you look at it from the two sides, that we are very optimistic that there will be influx of funds into the system by the politicians, considering that that's the language that will speak as people. So with this, you discover that with the funds that are made available to individuals, you will have funds so much in circulation. But the other aspect of it is that when we have pre-election issues like this, there are always problems of lack of governance. Because everyone in the system looks for a way to seek re-election, and there is a gap in governance, which affects the economic activity of both the local government, the state, and the federal government as a whole.
But sorry to butt in this case, we have President Muhammad Buhari, who isn't seeking a rerun. Actually, his term of 2 terms of 4 years has been elapsed.
Yeah, if you look at that, it's not alone that we talk about the president. There are other people that make presidents to fulfill his responsibility as the #1 citizen of this country. And they play a critical role. Remember when the president came in, we had an issue of a delay in the appointment of minister that affected the economic activity of the nation. So it's not alone that we talk about the president. He's just a single man who annexes and coordinates the activity of other parastatal, other agencies, other ministries that makes him to be fulfilled as a president. And that's why we feel that pre-election year like this, you discover that we have more of people concentrating on either re-election or strategically looking at who takes over from them, rather than facing governance that can enhance economy as one. The other aspect of it, which you said in your prologue, has to do with insecurity. We still observe high level of insecurity. You said we had a plus in terms of inflation. Yeah, holistic inflation, there was a drop. But when you talk about food inflation that affects the common man, you will share with me the sentiment that we did not have reduction, but we have an increase, as given by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics as per this. And you know it's critical. Food commodity plays a major role for an economy to survive. So if we continue with the level of insecurity we are experiencing, you'll discover that the level at which the businesses will grow will be very tight. Because businesses are not done in isolation. It's something that is interrelated. You discover that I need to go to the north, either to bring food or get some commodity from the east, from the north, from the west, bring to Lagos. Or situations where you have to travel far and you feel insecure is a problem. Infrastructure is another gray area that we need to consider if we must succeed. We have the people, we have the policy, and build a system that can make some of this policy to work. With that, we can grow. Enough of having some of these things on paper, but in reality, is it applicable? The answer is no. And we have more critical problems when we are in the season of pre-election, because the people at the end of affair shadow with some of this responsibility, concentrate more on election than governance.
Now, the economy seems to be gradually recovering, especially from the COVID-19 pandemic, after the removal of global lockdowns and the gradual resumption of economic activities saw the economy rose steadily. That's to 0.51% in the first quarter, 5.01% in the second quarter, and then 4.03% in the third quarter, as the year was estimated to end between 2.4% and 3%. Now, with no lockdowns likely in 2022, if you put the economy side by side, the IMF projection of 2.6 and the CBN's 2.8% GDP growth, how feasible are these projections, especially when you look at the activities in the pre-election year?
that now that we are out of COVID, activities should pick up because COVID actually impacted more on the activity, most especially in this part of the world. Don't forget, COVID has its own positive things too that it has brought. It has actually enriched some sectors. Talk about the telecommunications and the fintech. It has opened more of these businesses where we need to now minimize our movement in the operation that we actually carry out. But plus and minus that we need to really highlight out is that COVID is over. There are other artificial problems that we create for ourselves. Come to think about it, look at the problem we faced with this adulterated fuel. This has impacted negatively on the average business of an average citizen in the nation. Spend hours on the queue to get fuel, spend hours on the road because people have to queue for fuel. And you can imagine the productive hours that an average businessman is losing because of the flaws on the part of some of the people that are supposed to do what is right and they are not doing it right.
And there's also the black market issue.
Projection, we must put into consideration some things that may spring up from the fallout of the failure of those that lead us.
So what are your predictions, especially when you look at the fact that the issue you just mentioned, the adulterated fuel in circulation and affecting a lot of businesses? Do you see that affecting or reversing the effect of the funds that would be churned out in the pre-election year?
Yeah, it's going to affect it. It's going to affect it. And
positively or negatively? Mr. Olusegun.
It's going to affect it positively. And if you look from the other side too, negatively. Because those that we even push in some of the funds that we are saying, because we are in pre-election time, you need to give more. Imagine those days where you have to give 500 to an individual all because you want to owe him for an election, or to set up a business, or to buy some certain things that politicians use in empowering people. You discover that you need to spend more because of the cost of bringing some of those commodities. How much is keke napep years back, 4 years ago, when the politician was trying to use that to empower people? What is the cost today? So you discover that it's give and take. If you pump more, you are going to buy things at high exorbitant price because majority of the things that we rely on in this economy is import based. We are not a production economy. We are more of consuming economy because if you look critically, if you have a refinery functioning, we will not be talking of the problem we are faced with. So it's give and take. There will experience positivity in some area and also negativity because the time value of money will play a major role even in this pre-election time, and it will be more costlier for the politician. Even if they need to empower people, all in the power to hold their vote to themselves. So it's positive in some side and negative on some side also.
And how do you see that affecting the headline inflation? Of course, we saw that the recent one released for January inflation was 15.63%, which is, of course, lower than the one that we saw in December. What do you see? How do you see these analysis or these indices affecting the inflation, the headline inflation?
Yeah, the inflation reduced by 3 indices, 0.03, and that's from 16.60 to 16.6. What will actually happen is it will be difficult to maintain this because of the challenges we are faced with, and we might see the inflation going up because of the pressure of some certain things that we are faced with. Remember, between December and now, and January, when that was released, we did not face this challenge of adulterated petroleum, which has harmful impact on our economy. Remember, it is this PMX we use empowering our offices. We increase in inflation by the time we'll be giving the record for the month of February.
So what, in your opinion, what are some of the factors that may pose as threats to GDP growth in 2022, and what measures do you think should be in place to address these threats?
Yeah, some of the measures we need to be put in place.
Let's talk about the threats first. Let's talk about the factors that will pose threats first. Then we'll talk about how to address them.
Okay, you said the factors that will
pose as threats to GDP growth in 2022.
Okay, the factors that will put threat to the GDP growth are issues surrounding importation. Majority of things that we consume are more of imports than we even having self-sufficiency. It's something that is going to threaten the GDP. Insecurity definitely will play another role that we need to watch out for. We must improve this. Infrastructure deficiency is another key role that we must look critically into. And rebuilding the trust and confidence between the governed and those that are governing us. That again, we must close the gap. It's when you have confidence in some of your leaders or the people leading you, you can have a long-term investment. Or situation where there is trust deficit because of policy somersaulting, it's difficult for you to even go out to who investors into the country. Also in that area, because we need collaborative hand. We need to import some of these skills, technology into our economy. Situation where we don't have security or safety guaranteed, it's going to impact on the GDP on the long run. And until the government is intentional about the act of making sure that we are more of production economy than consumption, we will continue to have critical problems as a nation. So government should be intentional. Make sure we have some of the things that we need, our refineries, infrastructure, to make sure that things work. And let government lead the business. Give the business to those that understand the terrain by doing more of PPP, the public-private participation in some of the things we are doing. Just like they gave license to Dangote in setting up refinery. Can we have more people who have confidence to do this? And we have more of supply of some of these things into our environment, not just petroleum alone, or other commodities. You discover that the dynamics in economics of demand and supply will play a key role and will be better off for it.
Yes, you talked about foreign direct investment. That's one key area where a lot of uncertainty happens, especially as there is a lot of uncertainty, especially when it comes to the change of government. A lot of people are not sure what to see or what to expect in the new government. And so there's usually a drop in FDI, especially in a pre-election year. What do you foresee this year?
Yeah, same will still be applicable. Let me just give you a practical example.
Okay.
Most of some of these investment we talked about are long term. And situation where people owe investors and say this thing we are going to span for 25 years. And the person signing that particular policy will only be there for 4 years. Maybe if he's favored, maximally 8 years. And another person comes in and discover that I cannot continue with that policy because of personal thing he wants to agree to himself. It becomes a problem. And that's why we said, let the government build a system and don't let us build something around an individual. If you have a system in place, irrespective of the person that is at the end of our year, either for 4 years or 8 years, there will be continuity and there will be guarantee on the part of those that are planning this foreign direct investment. But if we continue to have inconsistency on the part of those that are leading us, not sustaining some of the policy or ideas or projects being carried out by their predecessors, we will continue to have deficiency in FDI. And that's why we have been advocating, let us build a system and not one man mobile issue where an individual does build things around him and his exit will lead to the collapse of that particular project, even if it is not legal. So that's an address we must, an area we must address if we must have more of FDI. Imagine when the refinery was sold, another government came in, reversed the policy. Same thing in the power sector, and you can see the problem that we are faced with as we speak. I just pray that people will be determined to build a system and not an individual thing, even for the nation, or the state, or at the local level.
In other words, to sustain that, we need continuity in government policies.
Well, if you say that, the continuity in government policy can only come by building a strong system and a strong institution that is beyond an individual.